better never ends. In health, in performance, no matter your starting point, you can always strive for better. My name's Charlie Goodchild, I'm your host, and this is the Better Never Ends podcast. We've made it our mission to share with you the expertise and wisdom of role models and leading experts in their field, teaching us about how we can be better, telling stories about their journey to better, and inspiring you to discover yours. So I was honoured to have Josh Patterson come into the podcast today, and I supported Josh on his Run for 1 Million challenge, where he ran 76 marathons in 76 days in the 76 cities in the UK, which was a world record. And it was quite remarkable. It was really interesting journey for me as a physio and working in a team that I hadn't worked in before, which we touch on in this discussion. But in particular, working with someone who was just so single-minded and so focused on his purpose, really. And we touch on this in the podcast as well. It really seems to drive him on. He has such clarity over this, and you can tell he's doing this for the right reasons. What he did physically was incredible, but without his power of mind, there's no way he would have been able to push his body to the limits that he was able to push himself to. And he's so passionate now about not letting that momentum die down. He's got plans for the future. He really wants to carry on in this space and try other challenges. Although interestingly, he's now thinking about serving other people as well. How does he help the next generation? How does he mentor others in order to help with their own physical challenges or mental health challenges? So it's such a great conversation, and Josh is obviously a pro and a really enjoyable listen. I got a lot from it myself, and even working within the team and being quite close to him, I'm still learning more and more and layering on more and more detail about what makes him who he is, because he is really quite a special person, and there's not many people who could pull off what he did. And if you've got any ambitions of trying something crazy, doing something new this year, or just being inspired and listening to his story, then this is absolutely the podcast for you. So yes, settle in for the ride. It's a real good one. Hello, Josh. Round 2.
Hello, Charlie.
So the first time we tried to record this, you turned up 5 hours early.
It's been an interesting few weeks. I still don't think I've recovered. My mind is like a mashed potato.
Yeah. So welcome to Josh Patterson today on our podcast, and very grateful to have him come in. As some of you might know, I supported Josh as his physio on his recent challenge, Run for 1 Million, where he did something quite remarkable, and we're going to talk about that today. So Josh ran 76 marathons in 76 days in the 76 UK cities, and he completed it. He did it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people doubted you, and you never doubted yourself, though, which is something we'll talk about. But Josh, can you just tell us a bit about you first of all? You know, what makes you who you are? Why would you take on a challenge like that?
That's a good question. Who am I? It depends how I wake up, to be honest. It's probably different versions, some slightly more sane than others. Yeah. Depends who I'm with, what the company's like, because that can bring out different versions too. Sometimes serious, sometimes not so serious. I guess somehow I've kind of stumbled over the past 6 years into this individual that's got into ultra sports without really the intention of it becoming a career. And I guess by being in that space, it's just opened doors and to new opportunities and businesses that, again, I probably never thought I would ever have or do. And I don't know, life's just been really unpredictable. I guess a lot of people would know me back in the day as JP from a reality TV show called Made in Chelsea, but life has very much changed so much since the day that I finished that show. And here we are now breaking records and have an amazing team. And I don't know, it's just saying it to you now, like, it doesn't matter how many times I say it, I think that just shows you how unpredictable life can be. So try not to write your story, because it will just be written.
What was the switch? You said that you didn't expect it to take this angle. So what was the switch where you went from being JP in this reality show, and then all of a sudden you're running ultras? What happened in that transition?
So I think sport was always a big passion of mine. It was always like my escape, I think, from the real world. And it was something I loved. It was something that I was very good at. But it got to the point where I think things like my anxiety, for instance, as I got older, progressively got worse. And it really started to affect my performances without me understanding what the reason was. I knew that I wasn't performing and I knew that I was struggling, but but I never really had a label for it to understand it and improve it. And rugby was a huge passion of mine and something that I really wanted to pursue. I wanted to play professional rugby and play rugby for my country. And I gave it a good shot for 4 years. And there were definitely moments of magic where I think the right people saw that there was so much potential. But I think for every individual that you work with, and I think maybe the way I've been treated in my journey makes me empathize with the people that I now work with and mentor. Okay. The things that I've maybe lacked in my life, I try and overcompensate to others. So actually, although I look back and I think, I wish that happened, or I wish I had that person, kind of grateful that it did, because I look at where I'm at right now and I think to myself, okay, well, I can be way more analytical with the person that I'm talking to and the ambition that they might have. And how can I improve that situation for them? What is it that I can offer them as a coach, a friend, support, whatever it might be? And it got to the point, I guess, after the 4 years where, unfortunately, the anxiety probably got the better of me and performances just were not consistent when they needed to be. And a dream eventually came to an end, which, I look back at it now and I think I'm so proud of myself for committing to a goal and a dream of mine, even though the outcome wasn't what I had desired. Yeah. Because I went for something. And I think too often we hear individuals regretting things that they had not done, or they look back in life and wish they had. And I think if you are genuinely passionate about something, whether it's the outcome you want or not, just go for it. Because I think sometimes the process or the journey, like I've just been sharing with you there's so much that you can take from that too. It's not always necessarily just the end goal. Yeah. And so I came back and there's a whole new story to that in terms of my struggles, but I kind of was disappointed because I didn't want my life to stray away from the sport element. I loved it. And it just, I had the mindset for it, I believed, in terms of like how committed I was to that process. And the first real opportunity came along when, at the time, the agency I was with, I got a phone call to say that Bear Grylls had asked if I would do a 10K survival race, and then followed by, I think it was a 30K survival race. So you would have to run said distance, but then there would be obstacles and challenges that you would have to face along the way. And for every one that you were, you didn't complete, there'd be forfeits. So say if you couldn't climb over a barrier, you'd probably have to do like 100-meter spider crawl, which, when you're 5K into a run is absolutely savage, especially if the weather's not great. And whenever I do something, I give 100% to it. I'm obsessed with it. A bit like with acting, method acting, I throw myself into that and that's it. And I remember meeting a guy called Rob, ex-SAS guy, and he lived in Marbella at the time. And he invited me out to spend 3 days with him up in the mountains where I would learn techniques. He would educate me on the hydration side of things, nutritional side of things, even like trying to like manage my mindset on how to kind of, I guess, approach the challenge itself, pre, during and post. And I ended up winning the first race, the 10K, which was a real eye-opener. And it really did come down to the way that I had approached every obstacle that was faced. And I kind of got a bit of a bug for it. And then when I went into the 30K, I was really humbled because I didn't really focus too much on the running. I kind of banked on the obstacles again. And unfortunately, just with that type of distance, you will be found out. Exactly. Yeah. And I kind of came away from that loving it. And it kind of opened a door. I think people started to recognize that there was something in there. But the real catalyst, I would say, was when my best friend Tanner had a motorbike accident. It was on my birthday. He came to meet my little girl. And on his way home on the bike, motorbike hit him, no fault of his own. And paralyzed from the waist down and was told he'd never walk again. So when he called me from the hospital, he just said, listen, man, I've had a small cry, but, life goes on. I might be told that I'm not going to walk again, but ultimately I have the power and control over my destiny. And my destiny is that I'm going to prove them wrong and I will walk again. He's like, I know my daughter is only 12 now, but one day she's going to want to marry. And when she does, I am going to be the man who walks her down the aisle. Are you going to help me achieve that? Simple word, yes. So we basically I ended up spending 2 years in a wheelchair, just doing two pretty big challenges, just focusing on the training, understanding the mechanics of it, where I could empathize with Tano's situation as much as I could, or the spinal community, just because I feel like the more you understand something, the bigger the impact that you can have. And so for me, if I'm going to understand the adversity that an individual in a wheelchair is facing, I need to face the same adversity. So I would commute to work and back, for instance, you know, whether it be potholes or trying to get up curbs or rude people, you know, barging you out the way, or cars, whatever it might be. But I think you utilize that energy, both good and bad. And I think that's what can really influence your performances. So I ended up doing the Berlin Marathon with him. I believe I was the first person in history able-bodied to do that in a wheelchair. And that was a really special experience. And I really got a bug for it. And I loved the community who was supporting me. And that's when the monstrous idea of doing John O'Groats to Land's End came into to play. And I wanted to do the entire thing again in a race chair, which was a very different wheelchair altogether. I mean, you are literally just sat on your legs. It's a very abnormal position to be in if you do have sensation in your legs. I mean, they will go dead pretty quickly. The pins and needles are pretty unpleasant. So again, it was a case of adaptation. And I fortunately broke the world record. So I think it was at 22 days and I ended up doing it in 19. And I think on a personal level, irrelevant of what people may have perceived from that challenge, I really knew that there was something special in terms of what could be achieved and what direction my life probably was going to go down. Because ultimately for me, I found myself waking up, I had purpose, and I loved what I was doing. I didn't care for money, I didn't care for materialistic things. I just knew that whatever I was doing was going to impact one individual, and hopefully that individual would then go impact somebody else. So it would be like a ripple effect. And I think that was my biggest struggle throughout life. And that's probably why rugby was a big thing of mine, was because I felt like I belonged. You know, I've kind of gone through life not really understanding why I'm here. You know, I'm not exceptional at anything. And I kind of struggled to see what my purpose of being here was, other than really just existing. And so by doing these challenges in the initial stages, and even to today, to be honest with you, it does give me purpose. And I'm good at it and I love it. And I love the people that I'm connecting with and the people that are supporting me and the people that we can support off the back of these types of challenges. But I think you learn a lot from each challenge and how to improve things, what can be altered. I think you also have to take into account how you react to that particular challenge, what needs to be amended, because ultimately you've got to ask yourself the question, you know, how long do you want to do this for? And what's it for? Because I think sometimes in this challenge space, people probably can lose sight of what the why is, and this attitude of willing to wreck themselves in order to achieve that goal. And for me, I think probably one of the greatest assets I have is my little girl being born and her forever being the first thing that comes to my mind with any decision that I make. Because ultimately, if I'm going to do something, if in any way it's going to affect her negatively, then it's a simple answer that, you know, we're just not going to do it. Whereas I think we're seeing a generation now that are inspired by certain people, and it's this attitude of, I'm willing to die for this. I question that mindset, to be honest with you, because for me, is that moment worth an entire life?
Yeah, that goes away from being inspirational then, doesn't it? Because it was almost an unachievable thing. Most people wouldn't commit to it, something that they might die from, for example. Whereas what you're saying is there's a hierarchy, and the hierarchy is that when you're doing it for when your daughter's safety is maintained, then it's worth it. And that purpose of helping just one person at a time then makes sense to you. But that hierarchy keeps you in check, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, also you love what you do. So the logic or the rationale behind wanting to do something that potentially is irreversible or will create long-standing damage, which then is a preventative, you know, thing for you to continue doing the thing that you love, is it not better to have learnt from that experience, even if it was the outcome that you hadn't wanted, in order to learn from that experience and then go again to successfully achieve it?
Yeah, I love this metaphor of, if you aim high, at worst you will miss high, and even if you miss high, you've learned a hell of a lot on the way.
Yeah.
If you aim low and achieve it, you don't really learn much from it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what you've been doing in your life is aiming really high, and even when you've missed, you've figured out, I'll just try that a slightly different way. Aim again, aim high, miss high again. And you just keep going through this process of trying something that's seemingly unachievable. And sometimes it is unachievable, but you learn and try again.
Yeah, but I mean, even that though, like, you know, I get this a lot, like, that's crazy, or why are you doing it? And is that achievable? what people need to start assessing is like what is and what isn't. Just because something might not be to you doesn't mean that it is the same for somebody else. I think we have to assess the individual and what it is that they're faced with. And I think what I'm really trying to inject into people is that youthful mentality that we once had. You know, you're a father, you get it with your children. They're invincible. Yeah. They can do everything and anything, and they want to do everything. And we're the ones that are constantly telling them that they can't, mainly because it's for their safety. But that, I think, starts to alter the mindset where we keep implementing these limitations within them. And that's where the fear comes from. And I think, unfortunately, we then don't have that conversation with them where when they're older and they can probably process what we're actually saying and make that decision for themselves, which is we really want to open up that door again. Because I think too many people now in life go through life with those limitations, and we are limitless. I mean, we really can achieve everything and anything that we want to. I mean, we see it every single day. There is someone doing something miraculous. Yeah. And I think the problem we have right now is that we put these individuals on pedestals and we idolize them, but we can't see ourselves in them. And we need to start injecting that belief in everyone around us.
Yeah, there's some really interesting research around child development that focuses on praise and how we give it out. And what they find is if you give out praise for achievement, you, in the end, long term, hold them back from pushing themselves because they never want to fail. Yeah. If they associate positive praise with achieving, it's that fear of failure that kicks in. Because if you praise hard work, actually they just keep, even if they fail, you work really hard on that, then they're just going to want to keep working hard. And it's that working hard that seems to drive on achievement in later life. So you don't focus on the achievement so much, it's more that hard work. Yeah. And it seems like you've figured that bit out for yourself. Maybe that was your upbringing anyway, but I see a lot of this praising achievement that's really holds kids back and affects kids in the long term. You've probably heard or got friends that are like this, where they achieve loads at school, but they get to the point where they start fearing failure and they just never kick on. I've got friends I can think of right now that's the same.
Do you know, I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and I'm finding my dynamic with her right now really insightful. The person I thought I probably would be when having a child, the person that I probably am now, you know, and because I'm not with her the entire time, you know, her mother and I are not together, the time that I have with her, I have to make it count. And also the way I raise her in my home could be very different to the way that she's been raised in another home. That doesn't mean that's good or bad, but it just means that when you're with her, that impact is it's instrumental. And so sometimes I do probably find myself being quite tough on her because I know what she's capable of, but also I can see a lot of my traits in her as a child already. When she doesn't like something or doesn't want to do something, she almost like sabotages it or just completely tries to switch off. Now, normally with anyone else, she might get away with that, but with me, it's like it's not an option, unfortunately.
She stopped trying, right?
She just stops trying, but also there's nothing more that lights my world up than when I see her face, like that spark when she's fulfilled something that she thought she couldn't do. And that could be something really silly like adding something up. But I love that in her. And for me, and I'm trying to trigger that in her mindset with that reaction. I'm like, look at that smile. Yeah. How good did that feel, bub? So next time you tell me you can't do something, just remember this moment. Yeah. Now, it doesn't matter if I do that 4,000 times with her. We'll eventually get there. But I also find with her performances, so she's very sporty. And I remember from a very young age, she's 6 now, I think she was like 3, and a teacher came up to me at school and said, listen, you know, this might seem strange, but India's really fast for her class. She's actually faster than the boys and the girls. And I did laugh because I was like, you know, she's 3. I mean, we're a little bit off the Olympics right now, but thank you for sharing that. But still, I was kind of looking forward to sports day and just seeing what it was. So by the time it came to sports day, I think she was 4 years of age. And she ended up winning her races, and she was very quick. And obviously coming from a running background now, my passions with sport, how I'm approaching it with her, I think is very different. I'm not pushing her in any way. Yeah. If she comes to me and she has questions, or if I'm training, I'll get her involved in some capacity. But I don't want to over-influence her decisions with things. You know, if she's truly passionate about running and she comes up to me and she's like, Daddy, can we go run? We'll go run.
That's it.
And there was a really poignant moment this year at Sports Day where they mixed it. So it was boys and girls, and a boy who's the fastest in the class narrowly beat her. Yeah. And she was so pissed off. Yeah. so pissed off. And I went up to her and she was gutted. I said, what are you upset about? She went, well, he beat me. I said, okay, but how does it make you feel? And she was like, well, it's not great because I didn't win. I said, do you want to win? She went, yeah. I said, so should we put the training in and next year we'll make sure we come before that boy? And she said, great. And that was it. We don't have to make a big deal. You don't have to share that disappointment with her.
She's guided it. She is essentially guided that, right? I think that's the right balance to find. And I've tried to take my son to all sorts of different sports to see what he's engaged in and what he likes. Quite often he doesn't. It's like, okay, we won't go there anymore. We'll go somewhere else. Yeah. At the moment, he loves being on his bike. He loves running and all that stuff. But he's leading it, which I think is a really healthy relationship.
But I keep sharing with India, and everyone, just because I say this, guys, doesn't mean that this is the holy gospel, but everyone has their own interpretation and they feel passionate about certain words and maybe not others. For me, I'm not a massive fan of the word failure, but I look at it and if I look at that right there, has my daughter failed because she hasn't won that race? Absolutely not. What I see in her, which is what I've been through myself, is it was an education.
Yeah, it's learning. If you're not failing, you're learning.
And she's learned from that experience, and she learned that she didn't like the way it felt by coming second to him. There's things like technique that we can work on, and I know people might go, God, that's a bit intense for a 6-year-old.
Not if she wants it.
She did, and we ended up going. We were just in a park one day, and she was asking me how I run. Where her head, her posture should be, how she should be pumping her arms, like where to part her feet, and again, I think it's this attitude of like, oh, she's 6, lay off. But do you know what? If they're 4 and they want to be, they want to absorb that knowledge, then why are we restricting that from them? Exactly. But I think it's the way you articulate it, and to that individual, I think is important, because sometimes I would agree there's probably the flip side where there's that intensity there, and that's probably where the enjoyment factor may start to diminish.
Yeah, and you did a lot of this for India, didn't you? A lot throughout your challenge, Run for 1 Million was really trying to get her engaged in it as well. And I know that even naming the bus was partly her inspiration. I think that was a really nice touch to root her in that. And what is her interpretation of it now that you've come out the other side of it?
So what I think I've come to accept is, from the other side, there's probably not a huge amount of desire to bring the awareness to India of what is going on. Yeah. And that's fine. So there are going to be difficulties in her engaging or understanding what it is her daddy does, and to be honest, at 6 years of age, there might be elements where she'll definitely have memories from things, but I don't think she'll really understand the magnitude of what her daddy's trying to do. Yeah. But that's fine. What's really important is that, like you pointed out there, is you create these memories that might not mean a lot to them now, but in the future are invaluable.
Planting the seed.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I would do things which you witnessed, if I can't say to her that I'm thinking of her, I can show her. And so she always paints my nails. And I said, Bub, will you paint my nails for the challenge? I want to do it. And she giggled. So she painted them. I can't remember what color it was. But by doing that, every time my mum, who was looking after her whilst I was away, would show her photos or reels, or even we'd be FaceTiming, first thing she'd ask is, can I see your nails? Yeah. So by seeing those nails, she knew that she was present, she was with me, or I was always thinking of her whilst they were there. Things like the camper van, her naming it, Elsa Mary Poppins, it felt like home, having something like that spread across the camper. When she'd come and join us, she'd get stuck into the camper van and try to tidy up, but actually really make more mess. And it was special. I try and get her to be a part of the huddles at the start of the marathons for her to see the community. I try and get her to run with me a little bit on certain sections. So for me, maybe also from a selfish point, like there's just no better feeling than seeing your child witness what it is that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not to the same scale of you, but the events I've done before, it's really nice when my kids are there and my wife's there, because you just get that feeling of comfort and like it's more rewarding when you're doing it, not just for yourself, but for your family.
Yeah, 100%.
And Josh, look, we met not too long ago, I guess. We met in December, as you were in the early stages of planning for this. And one of my first questions to you was, why? Why are you doing this, and what does it really mean? I was really quite blown away, actually, by your sense of purpose and your drive and your determination. So can you just go through that and just go through your own thoughts in December when you were planning it? What was it that you were really trying to achieve at that point?
I think my struggles in life will be continuous. I think the traumas that I've incurred across my life will stand with me for the rest of time. But I'm getting to a point now where I'm okay with that, because I look at the last 6 years and think, look what I've achieved off the back of that. That became the motivation to want to do something about it. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be seen as a victim, I wanted it to be seen as a success. Because ultimately that's the way that you can lead people and motivate them. And so with every challenge that we do, the why has got, and this is what I was saying earlier, has got to be so clear. You can't manufacture it. You can't bullshit yourself about it, because I think you'll be found out. But also I think the why, when you're really faced with those dark moments and those major hurdles, that's what enables you to overcome them. When you look at what we've been through together and you look at that challenge. So at the start of it, I said to Charlie, it's inevitable that I'm going to face a lot of pain. I'm going to get injured at parts, but I'll keep going. And that's the one asset, or one of the assets I have in this space, is that I'm able to cope with pain to quite a serious level. And I think that's probably just built over time and, the body getting used to it with these challenges. But it's got to the point now where if I ever thought it was irreversible, then that's when we would pull the plug on the challenge, no matter how far we're in. And I made that clear to Charlie and to the rest of the team. And I had that trust in them that they would make that decision. And, during the challenge, I came up against some pretty major hurdles. But, for me, knowing that I had you there, by my side and the other team, Sharon, Nick and Simon supporting me, it just kind of gave me that safety blanket where I knew no matter what I was faced with, I was going to be okay, because I knew between the four of you, there was always a solution, and solutions that I'd never had before. I think that's what made this particular challenge so unique in comparison to others, is that I think when I first came into them, it was probably almost like self-sabotage. If I'm going to be self-destructive, I'm going to do it in a healthy way, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah, I'm going to smash my body, but I'm doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, exactly. This is my way of exerting my pain and frustrations with life. But then I started to realize that if I really love this and I want longevity, I couldn't keep doing that, because I was coming out of them so physically broken. And actually, to come out of a challenge and not be broken would be great. And I know we're going to kind of sort of fast forward and then go back, but, I honestly came out of that challenge, which will probably blow a lot of people's minds, in probably the best state of any challenge I've ever been in. And yet that was the longest. Now,
yeah. And we then still respected the fact that there was a big recovery and took our time, right? What were we, 2 months post, now 2.5 months post, and you're just back running, and you're pain free, but we took our time in that because we were respecting the fact that the body had taken an immense physical load.
Just don't cheat the process and listen to the people that you respect, in your corner. They are professionals. Now, again, I'm going to contradict this because that's not always the case. Sometimes you'll have maybe a professional or a close family member or friend telling you not to do something, but I think ultimately yourself. Mm-hmm. But also don't be ignorant to the fact that there are people out there with a huge amount of expertise, and when they're right, they're right. And I think in this case, I listened to every single thing that yourself, Sharon, Nick and Si and Chris said. And, ultimately the outcome was that we not only completed it, but we did it in a unbelievable fashion. So for that, I'm very grateful. And I think that for me was a huge education moving forwards, how instrumental your team is, but also like, what are the assets that they bring to the table? For me, I really had to shift things up for this challenge. I've had certain team members with me, but there's maybe been links that have been missed. So one example being a dad, certain team members I'd had prior, hadn't had children. And so they would probably struggle to understand or empathize with my situation, and would probably write programs and have these expectations that sometimes couldn't be met, which would then be followed by frustrations. And then that would frustrate me, because it wasn't a case of me not being willing to do it. It was a case of I just, at that time, I couldn't.
Remember the hierarchy.
Yeah.
India sits top.
This is
so
it.
There we go. So, you have that priority right there. All the other decisions come second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I spoke to Megan, who basically set up this team of Avengers, you know, when I met yourself, you know, number one, obviously for me is character. Like, what's the individual actually like? Two, I think is the qualifications, I guess, behind the individual. And then three, it's not a major thing, but are they a parent? Because actually I wanted to bring in at least 1 to 2 individuals who were, and both yourself, Sharon and Simon actually were. And that went a long way, because there were definitely times where I would feel insecure about my decision with this challenge and certain time frames being away. And I think having the reassurance from the three of you, all as parents, saying what you're doing is a great thing, she will appreciate this later in life, it just reassured me. And I think had I had team members, you know, probably not in the same situation, you know, they may have not articulated it in that certain way. And I think you soon realize as well, whether it's recovery, whether it's the performance side of things, you have to love it. You don't want to just go into a gym and just get beaten up. You don't want to just go into recovery and get beaten up. You know, if you can actually have a laugh and connect and be really invested into one another, it's something that you look forward to. And I think for a lot of individuals, sometimes that's lacked.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point about the team, and within this space and within elite athletes in general, you need a good team around you. But the unique thing here is that the team around you didn't know each other that well before we started. So it was because we work in this space where we're running our own thing, freelancing. It was a real interesting dynamic to see how we get going from the start and how do we hit the ground running. And there probably were teething problems to begin with, where we figure each other out. Yeah. But we always kept saying, look, ultimately, we're supporting Josh here. It's nothing to do with us. We are just enabling you to try and complete this challenge. And it started off with the aim of we'll take you to the start line and then off you go. But all four of us, by the time we got to that start line, 2.5 months into the journey, there was no way we were going to stop there. We just felt this need, this urge to continue to support you in whichever way we could. And because we all have lives, like we've spoken about, families and other work commitments, that was pretty tricky at times, because you almost want to be there every day. I would have loved to have been coming every day, coming to support you, working out your injuries face to face. But obviously it wasn't realistic. Yeah. But that's where the team, I felt, really came together, and we lent on each other at different parts to support you whenever you needed it.
Yeah, I mean, the standard, I would say, was definitely set on that challenge. I mean, unfortunately, I've actually lost a good friend from that challenge, and that was because of their unwillingness to go above and beyond. You know, I think sometimes we can make assumptions or judge and be frustrated by the situation that we're working too hard or for too long. But when you're in that situation, like, no one can predict what the outcome is going to be. It's every day it's like roulette. What are we waking up to? And you can either be that person who's selfish and takes into account themselves, or you just unfortunately have to suck it up and go, this is a bit shit, but do you know what? I've got that person's back.
It's about the purpose, isn't it?
And that person's got my back, and they've got their back. And the team, if anything, it really did highlight any individual that didn't have that quality. You know, Simon came and ran a marathon in all 4 of the countries I was with. You ran 2 marathons with me. Nick ran his first marathon, I think, ever. Yeah, ever. And I had to get an MRI scan because he literally
I think he's still limping now.
He ran himself into an injury. Sharon, when finding out I was injured, would literally fly without a request to a country to treat me for an hour or two. Like, find yourself a team that I had, and I'm telling you, like, you are invincible. Like, that meant so much to me, because there was a massive why behind the challenge. But I think also when I was thinking about the team and what you guys were doing for me, you know, this challenge and the success of it wasn't mine, it was ours. Everyone had put so much hard work into it, and I just didn't want to let you guys down.
Do you know what? It really felt that at the end. We were all there together. We were all there for the finish line. It was really quite a special moment, actually. And I would say the first time where we felt together was in the build-up. And this is something that just came to me whilst we were talking then. In the build-up, there was a point where your training plan was really pushing you. There was a lot of volume, and you're doing these double-day sessions. You started getting these niggles. You had knee, some quad stuff. Your back was bothering you. Your glutes were bothering you. We all got together and we just went, he's just training too much.
Yeah.
As much as he's got a lot of volume to get in before the event, he's going to break down if we don't we don't squash that down and settle the symptoms.
Yeah.
And we all came together and we were in complete agreement, and we just went, right, let's give this message across. Let's just see if we can change the plan. And from then on, it was like we were just united, and it never felt like we were individual anymore.
And I think also what was really nice was, for me, with every session I had with any of you, it just brought like a different energy. You know, we had different connections, and I liked that. You know, it was nice. It was something to look forward to, but also I felt like you guys really understood my language. And I think this is something that loads of people need to invest in and understand. You know, the way I articulate myself might connect with a demographic of people, and it might disconnect from others, and that's absolutely fine. But I think just having that awareness of how to communicate a message to someone, because sometimes I think people can go into it quite stubborn or ignorant, and it's one tone for all. Yeah. And that just doesn't work. You know, you are a very chilled guy, and that energy for me worked. You know, Nick comes in and he's this like comedic Aussie lad, and I jester with him all the time, and that makes me laugh. Simon comes in as this intense lion cheerleader who just amps you up even if you don't need it, and amps himself up in the process, which just makes it so funny. I remember at the start line of one of the marathons where I used to go into them just so chilled, and like he's trying to hype the entire country up, like the adrenaline is just coursing through his veins, and I was the one being like, I think we need to just rein it in slightly. And then Sharon, I mean, she's bonkers in the best possible way. That woman would light any room up. Absolutely. You know, and I'm just so grateful for all of you guys. But even like Chris, you know, Chris had to understand me, because I think, you know, he comes from a Marine background. He was a very credited one too, and he's one of the toughest men I've ever met in my life. And, you know, for him, he realized with me, it's not about shouting, it's about a certain tone to communicate a message. And I remember when, I think it was my, what was it? My band, my knee, do you remember when I had the flare up on my knee? ITB, sorry. Yeah. And I was trying to run through it, and I was in so much pain. And I remember him just calling me, and he was just like, "Are you an effing beep?" And I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Well, stop acting like one." And that was it. He just hung up, and I just stopped running. I was like, "Yeah, message is heard. We'll pack that in." And, you know, because you got to think about tomorrow, as in like whatever I do today is going to impact to tomorrow. So let's not make those stupid decisions. But also, you guys had put so much time into me that I didn't want it to be wasted. But equally, I never focused so much on the recovery going into a challenge like we had there. I mean, we committed 5 hours a week between yourself and Sharon. And I think what was really interesting, and what shocks people when we often talk about Run for 1 Million, people often think that you had to run so much. You had to be fit enough to run 76 marathons, when in actual fact, it was the opposite, right?
This is what we got across to you when you were chasing, and we were just like, well, hang on a minute.
It's not key.
Yeah, you just need to be fit enough to be able to run your first chunk. And then you're going to adapt during the challenge. Yeah. Each marathon, you're going to get fitter each day, which is weird. Yeah. But you're probably going to have a bit of a slump early where you get really fatigued. But provided you don't break in that period, you're then going to adapt again. You get this compensation happen, this adaptation within your body. Yeah. And once you'd got on board with that, and once we were all in agreement that was what was going on, we were able to reduce your volume in training so that we didn't break you in training. Yeah. And then you were able to get to the start line. I felt great. And I remember you saying, I feel amazing. And then what was it? You peaked in like 4 or 5. Yeah. You had a bit of a dip, just like we thought you might. Yeah. And then you peaked again, didn't you? Another few later. And I think you had 4 or 5 different peaks. I remember you telling, and even just following your reels, there were days when you would just go, I feel amazing today. Yeah. And then a few days later, I'm feeling awful today. Yeah. That must have been a real roller coaster for you. What was it like going through that emotion and that sense? Yeah,
it was. I think what was crazy about the experience is that you'd have a day where you are so physically broken, you hated it, and then you'd wake up the next day, and this could be like 55 marathons in, and then run the fastest marathon the following day. It was just bizarre. But I keep stressing this to people. Your environment influences everything.
Big time.
Now, the day I probably didn't have a great day, without being disrespectful to certain cities, there are certain cities, let's say, that are not quite as outstanding as others. And so when you've got a really dark, gloomy day and the environment you find yourself in is not the most inspiring, those days sometimes can be a bit of a struggle because wherever you are, that energy radiates onto you. And so if there's not a lot of energy, what is it that you're feeding off? So then when you find yourself in an environment with maybe a great set of people and conversation that you're so invested in and the weather's nice and you're in awe of the architecture or the cathedral that you started at, it makes such an impact to your day. And so the one thing that I really took from that challenge quite early on was to not dwell on the emotion, both good and bad, because it would change the following day. It might last another day, it might not. It was so unpredictable. And so I was okay with that. I just knew it wasn't going to last forever.
If you hadn't been able to do that, you wouldn't have lasted. That ability to just accept that these emotions, these feelings were transient and that they can come and go definitely has helped you get through that. And there's no doubt in my mind that's the truth.
Yeah, but I also think it got to the point as well, Bud, where I was like, what do you want from that? Like, okay, you feel rubbish. Okay, we can keep dwelling on the feeling of feeling rubbish, but where does that get you? Now, you can either sit here in this camper van and prolong what you have to do, or you can just reluctantly go to the start line and just put one foot in front of the other, and it might start as a walk. And then you might start as a jog, or it might be a jog, and then it could go into a run. But then when you find yourself like half a marathon in, God, it kind of triggers you a bit. You're like, oh man, I've only got half a marathon left. And you're like, well, hang on. Like, if I'm able to run half a marathon in that psychological state, you can do anything, And this is what I mean. There's so many lessons that are thrown your way. I think it's having the ability to acknowledge that when it's pretty much slapped in your face.
Yeah. And we've spoken about setbacks and challenges throughout, and some of those were injury related, weren't they? And we touched on it earlier in the podcast. But quite early on, you had a bit of a scare with your lower back, and one of these things, this was one where the preparation was absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
In the build-up, you'd had some back problems, and you'd said, I've had back problems for 10 years.
Achilles heel as well.
Yeah, Achilles heel. You had the back problems probably contributing to your glute pain as well. Yeah. So we touched on that early on, and we'd said, look, if this happens, we think that this is going to be something that is transient, another one of those things that you can stretch through, move through, might have a day or two where it's tough, but then it'll probably be okay. Because we were able to prove in that build-up that this was a muscular problem.
Yeah.
Your protection system, your pain system, your neurological system, however you want to think about it,
yeah,
is worried about your back. So when anything threatening happens, it tightens it up.
Yeah.
And it might be running a long way, it might be bending down to pick something up, or just a feeling of stress, something like that. And we were able to prove that in a session, weren't we? Where we could essentially switch off that protection system in one session, prove that there wasn't a structural problem. Without that lesson, I don't know if you'd have coped, because what was it, day 5, day 6? You had something like that. Very, very early on, you had that setback where your back went.
It was Bangor.
So it's early,
which was quite early on. It wasn't great. I was in a lot of pain in that.
And I was on the phone to you, and I said you some stretching exercises, but the key was that just reminded you, look, we prepped for this. Yeah. Chances are you're going to be able to stretch through this. Take it easy, but get moving, get going. I think you'll be okay. Yeah,
I mean, the Achilles heel, though, I think was fascinating. How we came back from that. I honestly can't figure it out. Was that purely just power of mind? I remember when we were in Londonderry, the other way around. And we actually ran a really sensible marathon, and it was like the last 2K, I think it was, where I'd never felt anything like it with the Achilles, where it was rock solid. Like, I could not bend my ankle or foot at all. Like, it was just rock. And if I had, it felt like it would have snapped, if I'm going to be honest. And so I literally limped the remaining 2K. And I remember getting in the camper van, I thought, fuck, this is it. This is the end of the challenge. How on earth from now until tomorrow morning am I meant to improve this? We can't. An Achilles heel is just such a sensitive point. And I'd had that injury for so long, and I felt like we'd rectified it. And so I was a little bit disheartened that it had come back so early on. But we soon realised that whenever I progressed the pace, that seemed to be what was triggering it. And I remember staying at my auntie's that night, and I kind of got into the coldest bath I possibly could and did some stretching and got a good night's sleep, woke up, and I remember just walking to the start line, and that just triggered me. I was like, how the hell am I walking to the start line? And then we just started jogging, and then the jog turned into a run, and then we completed the marathon. And I don't know if it's one of those things, Bud, where I feel like life now is taking us so far away from our roots and empowering the mind and body to do the things that it has done for thousands of years. And in that moment, my mind just went, do you know what? We don't have the luxury of time. So I'm going to have to freaking overpower everything I can in order to enable you to run again tomorrow. And we did. Because would any medication or anything work? I don't know. And again, I think it was just the why behind it. You know, ultimately, we were trying to inspire a person to live. Giving up was not a choice, because if we gave up, then we gave them a reason to as well. And so, like I said, it was not that option for that particular marathon. And so I don't know if it was a case of just pushing into a headspace that I've probably never been before, but I feel so grateful to have found myself in that situation, because if you've been there once, you're probably going to be there again. But I feel like we're more equipped to face that.
Yeah. And you had some more challenges along the way with your body as well. You start to feel that foot pain within 10, 12?
9.
Wow.
It was 9 actually. Yeah, we found out.
And that's the one that's only just recovered as well. So we, through the assessment during and then after, we came to the conclusion it was probably a bone stress injury, which may or may not have been a stress fracture. We decided not to scan it in the end because it was improving. But at the time, you didn't need to know that information, and you were very clear to begin with that anything that might derail your ability to do it, we wouldn't share it like that. So we decided not to say this is potentially this. We just said, well, can you keep running? And your response was yes. And that was pretty much it. Your foot's sore. You might have to manage it. We might have to try and tape it here, there and everywhere. And you got through.
We did.
Quite remarkably.
There's definitely days with more tape than others. And I mean, that foot was excruciating, you know, from Marathon 9 as well. The big concerns we had was that essentially any niggles that I would have inherited quite early on naturally would have progressed into something so much bigger. Yeah. So when you're inheriting these sorts of issues in as early as Marathon 9, and then you look at how far we had to go to 76, like, because I'd never been there before, I had no idea what the outcome of that would be. Now, what I think's phenomenal is that eventually you diagnosed, I think it was Marathon 40, that I'd torn my right calf.
Again, I didn't tell you at the time.
No, you didn't tell me, thankfully. But what I think's insane is to think that I managed to plant the weight on my right leg from Marathon 9 to 40, and it took that long for the calf to tear. And then to think that we then, from Marathon 40 to 76, 36 marathons, ran on essentially 2 incredibly damaged legs.
Well, you actually rehabbed your calf by running a marathon every day, because it got better, didn't it?
Yeah.
Your calf by the end was kind of normal again, which it only makes sense when you think of your training history. For any other person, it would be absolute lunacy to even think about that.
Yeah.
But when we asked you the question again, do you think you could run tomorrow? Only you really knew whether you could or you couldn't. And because this was one long event, a 76-day event, we can't prescribe rest. We can't prescribe rehab because it just adds on more load. All we could do was try and make you feel as good as possible. Stretches, foam roller, soft tissue release where we could, and reassurance that we think this is okay. Because ultimately, the only one who was going to know if you weren't okay was you.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I'd been there before. The pain I endured from John O'Groats to Land's End, the pain I'd endured from Run for 1 Million, like, there's different types of pain. There's 24 hours pain, there's 18 days of pain, there's 60 miles in a wheelchair pain, but it's muscle in my memory. You've been there before and you've got through it. And I think that probably is what helps you get through that, because it's really hard, I think, sometimes to assess whether you are unique and able to get through that. Would everyone be the same, or would there be a point where it would just be too much for someone? I don't know. And that's the question that probably can never be answered, because no one can ever morph into your body and you can't morph into theirs to really understand it.
Well, the fact that we are all different means that the answer to that is almost certainly that everyone would have a different reaction to that. And that's not a criticism or a judgment in any way. It's just a reality of the fact that we are all individuals and different. You as an individual just happen to be incredibly tough-minded and purpose-driven, and that purpose drives you towards going through pain barriers because you think it's worth it. Yeah. Someone else might completely feasibly decide it's not worth it, and that would be completely normal as well. You're on one end of the continuum and other people are on the other end.
I guess we also saw a pattern as well where people are invested in vulnerability and they are invested in emotion, and they are invested in suffering. And those were the days where the donations flew in. Now, I would never choose to be in that position because it's not comfortable. But at the same time, the benefits were that the charity was making more money from the donations. The socials were being interacted, a lot more people wanting to comment and, lending their support. And, by the end of it, we built such a phenomenal community, of people not just coming to run with us, but again, like from a broadcasting point of view and socials, it was a really humbling experience. And I think it's an odd one, isn't it? You can never really assess what impact that challenge has had. But I think if you look at the number of people that came to run during the course of those 76 days, it would be amazing to know how many lives will be affected by that.
That was the whole purpose. Affect one person at a time.
Yeah.
Help them to feel better.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that must have helped you in those moments of pain and suffering was the people around you, the community around you. I mean, how humbling and touching must it have been to have all those people come to run with you?
Yeah, I think you have to hear when other people speak, like really intently to their story, because I think that in itself, they're sent to support you in some capacity by the things that they say. When you listen to an individual who's lost a loved one, and they're utilizing that as inspiration to make that individual proud and go on and support other people who might equally be going through the same, or doing something so it's a preventative measure so that someone doesn't have to face something like that. Individuals that are living with medical conditions and are defying the odds. I'm just a guy who's running 76 marathons, and yes, I'm in pain, but I'm running alongside someone who almost died from, a heart condition and is running 20 kilometers with me firmly. I can stop this challenge at any point and go back to my normal life. This person for the rest of their life will have this heart condition. And the fact that they are risking everything to run alongside me, like, what more purpose do you want? It was really, really inspiring. Charlotte from Norwich, a girl who joined us, she had lost her sister tragically to suicide, who was a keen runner. And Charlotte ran a half marathon, a week after her sister passed, and then 3 weeks later came to join me in Norwich, and she ran the full marathon without a lot of training. When you really think about 3 weeks, is you're just like, that's your entry level, like, let's get you to a 5K type stuff. So again, power of the mind. She was just phenomenal. And I just think she'll be such an inspiration to anyone else that is going through something like that.
Yeah, at times I remember looking at the reels, and even one of the ones I was there with you, like the Pied Piper, who just could not believe the amount of people that had come to support you. It was quite an incredible community you built around this. And I guess you must now be really keen to keep pushing those messages out there and continue the good work that you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of disappointed with my execution post-challenge. I think we built so much momentum, and I think there was a lot of pressure to continue the socials and build it, but I just was exhausted. I
think that's okay.
Yeah, and I saw this amazing quote. Instead of asking yourself why you're lazy, ask yourself why you're so tired. And that stands with me now. Where, like, post challenge, I'm like, why am I not posting? Is it because I'm being lazy, or is it because I'm tired? And the reality is, I'm just very tired.
You need a break.
Well, yeah, because I haven't really had a break since I came back, and that was how many months ago now? What was it? May, June, July? 2 and a bit months, and I snapped straight back into being daddy, which was so important, and my business runner, focusing on that with all the projects we've got going on. There wasn't much time, but, fortunately I'm going to get a few days off this weekend, which I'm going to make the most of.
Absolutely. And what is coming next for you, Josh?
So this is a really interesting question. The amount of people I get coming up to me who either go, what's next? Or they go, is that it now? They look at that. And I think what I try to stress to people is, because they go, well, how are you going to top that? And I'm like, why do you have to top it? It's not about being bigger, and it's not about being better. And so I try and whenever I talk to someone, I'm always like, listen, it's not about the size of the challenge. It's about the connection you make. I could do something 20 times smaller than what we've just done, but I could connect on a much larger scale to what we did, which will be hard, because I think what we achieved in that was pretty special. But I think it's about shifting things. I will always be so passionate about improving a person's mental health, especially my own. But there are so many communities out there so many things environmentally that I would love to learn and try and improve myself, because ultimately I want to make the world a better place. I want to leave it in a better place than when I came into it, because I think too often we're takers. We take a lot from Earth and we don't really give a lot back. And I feel like the formula that we have created is a successful one. I have zero interest in being confrontational. I don't want to villainize anyone. I don't want to point fingers. There's no right or wrongs. I think it's just a case of I'm not perfect, but I want to learn. And, I could be slightly upset about a certain someone or a condition or an environmental issue that I would love to try and impact in a positive way. And I think if we can focus on that and bring people in on that journey where it's not a weight on their shoulders, then I think we can have a far more successful impact in whatever it is that we wish to achieve. So I have got a goal in my mind for the next challenge. It's probably going to take a couple of years maybe to get to that point, but I'm actually okay with that. Before, it would have been like a challenge a year. We've got to throw ourselves back into it. But, I've got my little girl growing up and my business and other projects that are going on right now. And sometimes it's nice just to focus on yourself, because I think my life has been committed to people and charity for the past 6 years. And financially, that is helping a lot of people, but I need to start putting food on my table too, and just physically as well. I think just allowing your body to have that time to rest. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. You almost need to detach yourself from your body and see it as a person and how that person should be treated. Because I think too often we probably abuse our bodies, right? And for me, it's about gratitude. My body just enabled me to successfully run 76 marathons. And so out of respect and to show that gratitude, I'm going to commit to that rehab and make sure that we complete it in its entirety. I'm not going to rush back into something, but when we're ready to pull that trigger on that next challenge, we're good to go.
Yeah, this podcast is called Better Never Ends. And sometimes I even challenge my own thoughts about what that really means. And this is my own personal why as well, so it has a real deep connection to me. But one of the things that's important is that better never ends doesn't mean bettering each individual thing in isolation. So you touched on that just then. You said it doesn't mean that I have to do more than 76 marathons in 76 days. It means that you'll find what's the next thing I can have an impact on, either for yourself or for others. Yeah, it doesn't have to be in the same paradigm. I had this realization when I was in my early 30s that I wasn't going to keep getting better at rugby anymore. So I stopped playing rugby because it stopped becoming a purpose. Yep. So I started running, and that was when I realized that I enjoyed the process of getting better. It wasn't necessarily just playing rugby week in, week out. Yeah. I liked getting better at it. When I realized I couldn't invest in getting better in that, found another way. Yeah. So it's my infinite purpose, but the direction, the orientation of what that better is going to change year on year. Sounds like that's an element for you as well.
Well, I mean, I love mentoring people. I truly believe that I get the best results out of people just because I've made the mistakes, and it's not a case of me preventing them from making the same mistakes, because I think everyone has to learn. But I think in order for them to get the most out of the experience, that they can learn from where I went wrong. And I think, again, it's understanding or having that asset of understanding a person's mechanics and language, how we can really connect with them to get the most out of it. So I think my focus for now is going to be to continue to support people. And I think, I've been doing this for 6 years, and I've done world firsts, we've broken world records, we've set new world records, and there's a huge amount of knowledge there, and I want to share it with people in my own way. And, it does seem to be connecting. In what capacity that might be, it could be anything. It could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be TV, I'm not sure. But I think there is so much that I would love to share. I think mainly because I've come from a background where certain individuals you look at and they were destined for stardom from a young age, or they were born to be a gold medalist,
That wasn't me.
It was definitely not me. And I think it's the fact that I've only picked this up in recent years, where more and more people can connect and relate to what it is I'm doing. And it's about balance. I'm not just fully committed to this life. I like to enjoy myself. I like to drink with my mates. I like to go to a club or a festival, whatever it might be, just because for me, it's ways of switching off. You don't want to just throw your headspace into something the entire time if it's it's not essentially your full career. Because I think that's where we maybe sometimes get things distorted, where, you know, we might be really inspired